Welcome to the PewterCast. I'm Brent Allen, your host. Today is December the 21st, 2016, and this is episode 25, Lassoed by the Cowboys. Happy winter solstice, y'all, and you know what that means. From here on out, the days start getting longer again. Well, at least until June. And I got to tell you, it's a good thing, too, because I am getting sick and tired of it getting dark at 4:30. Which I know for you guys in Tampa, you're a little closer to the equator. It doesn't happen until a little later. But for me, it's like 4:30 and we're getting dark. It's crazy. I hate that. And I got small kids. I need them outside for longer than that. Well, guys, I guess honestly, really bigger than that, how's your week been? You know, for 5 weeks in a row, we've really gotten to experience the thrill of having our beloved Buccaneers be winners for the week. You know, everything turns up when a Bucs win, doesn't it? You know, I tell you something that really turned up for me was my fantasy team. And I don't know. The crazy thing is, I don't even have that many Buccaneers on my team because I'm in a league full of Bucs fans. So we all kind of picked apart the Buccaneers. So I have a bunch of other people, but my fantasy team did really well, and I'm blaming the Bucs, even though they had nothing to do with that. And on the back of that, this past week notwithstanding, for the first time in my fantasy career as a fantasy GM, I'm playing for the league championship. So go me. And I'm facing none other than an instant cast caller, Nick Citro. So, Nick, you're going down, big boy. I'm going to take you down. Well, guys, that's been 5 weeks in a row. And then there's been this week. And coming off of a loss to the Cowboys, honestly, I find myself without an adjective to properly describe how I feel about it. I can't say it was a tough loss, though it's been tough. It wasn't embarrassing by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I'm quite proud of what our boys did. Personally, I hate moral victories, but I'm going to say that there was some positives to take from this game. And there certainly are. All in all, I think it just is what it is. It was a loss, and it sucks. But we're so many days removed from it, I'm over it. I've had time to go back and really, for the first time, watch the entire game on the All-22 and dissect each and every single play, at least for the offense. And mostly, I got to say, right now what I'm feeling is I'm ready. I'm ready for the game against the Saints. I'm ready to win, and I'm ready for this show. And that being said, I want to go ahead and bring on our guest for the show. She has been with us before, and she is one of our highest-rated, she is the highest-rated guest host for the entire season. So no pressure there, girl. Please welcome back to the show, Bucs Princess Nikki. Nikki, how's it going?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm ready for Christmas. I got to tell you, it's been fun this year. I've got a 4-year-old, which this is just it's a magical time when Christmas comes up when you have a kid who's that age, and I've got a 1-year-old who's running around and she's real interested in those things that are underneath the tree. And why do we suddenly have a tree in our house? And what are these little things on the tree that I can pull off and break? I'm ready. I'm feeling good. You know, it's Christmas week. I'm ready to do it. How about you? You all ready for Christmas or whatever it is you do over the holidays?
Yeah, I'm ready for it to be over.
To be over?
I'm not a Grinch or a Scrooge by any means, but I don't know. I don't get all into the whole holiday thing. My favorite holiday is Halloween, and I just like decorating for Halloween. I'm not big on Christmas decorations, so I don't do trees. Mm-hmm. I've done all my shopping. I do enjoy giving gifts and receiving gifts. I just think that's fun. And I just think that, for me, Christmas is just, okay, it's that one time a year that I set aside to have dinner with family that I don't see often. So for me, it's not this big old thing. I mean, I don't have kids. I have 2 dogs. We have a new puppy, and they're about the same age as your kids, which is kind of funny. So, the boyfriend and I did the puppy shopping at PetSmart, so we'll give them their presents on Christmas morning as well. But, yeah, it's kind of whatever. I'm more looking forward to February because we are actually in the process of booking a cruise for our anniversary to the Caribbean. So.
Okay, so what's the anniversary date?
Oh, actually, our anniversary is on St. Patrick's Day, but that's spring break, so we're doing our cruise a month early. Gotcha.
I just asked because my wife and our anniversary is February 5th. So, love you, babe. I know you don't listen to any of these shows ever because she gets enough of me talking outside of the podcast. So, all right. Well, Nikki, why don't we go ahead and jump into today's show, guys? We've got a very special show planned. Now, normally we would start with a very specific look at the game that we just came off of, but honestly, you know what? We we're going to get to that, but we're going to do something special with it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to jump straight ahead to what normally would be our second segment. And Nikki, we're going to start off with our top 3 segment right here at the top of the show. And in light of the Pro Bowl rosters just being announced, Nikki, we're going to be taking a look at our top 3 Pro Bowl surprises, Buccaneer Pro Bowl surprises. And then we're going to jump into really a familiar segment called Fan to Fan Live, where Nikki and I are going to have a special guest call into the show. And we're going to get to be able to talk a lot about the Dallas game. We're going to talk about some other stuff that just has to do with Buccaneers fandom as a whole and some of the craziness that we've been seeing going on out there in the world of Bucs fandom. So, guys, that's coming all your way on today's show right here on the PewterCast. Stay tuned. Hey guys, I just wanted to take a quick moment and give a huge shout out and plug to my friends JD and Brendan over at the In Session Film Podcast, who just recorded and released their 200th episode. That's right, that's over 4 years of podcasting, and the In Session Film Podcast is one of my personal favorites to listen to each and every week. It was actually In Session Film that first introduced me to the world of podcasting, and you could sort of say that the PewterCast is kind of a spiritual offspring to the In Session Film Podcast. Maybe the kid who's really into sports, if you will. But anyway, JD, Brendan, guys, congratulations on 200 episodes. That's a big deal, and I couldn't be more proud to be part of the In Session Film family, even if I'm just kind of the third cousin twice removed that you only see on holidays, sometimes. Congratulations, guys.
Hey guys, this is JD from the In Session Film Podcast. Every week on our show, you can join my co-host Brendan and I as we review the latest films that's out in theaters. It also inspires us to discuss a top 3 list of some sort, and we have a lot of other fun movie discussions as well. It's always a blast. And we also have a show on Fridays called our Extra Film Podcast. This is a show that gives us the space to talk about the latest indies and art films and other classics that we normally just don't get to talk about on our main show. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, Player FM, and more. In fact, you can just see everything about us, including our social medias, at InSessionFilm.com. So join us every week. We'd absolutely love to have you.
Welcome back to the PewterCast. You're listening to episode number 25. And for today's top 3, we thought we'd take a look at some Pro Bowl stuff, since the roster selections just came out this week. And turns out we've got Mike Evans, Gerald McCoy, they're going to the Pro Bowl. Plus we've got a handful of others who are in as the alternates. And, maybe some people will drop out and more of our guys will get in there. But along with the roster announcements, some of us were certainly surprised to see some people there, maybe more so surprised to not see some people there. So we're going to be taking a look at our top 3 Buccaneer Pro Bowl surprises. So, Nikki, I'm going to start with you first. Did you have any criteria when picking your list, and what was your number 3?
Oh, man, I always forget you make me do this backwards. My criteria, it was just the first things I thought of when you said, top 3 Pro Bowl surprises. So I kept it to the Bucs into this year.
Okay.
And I would say number 3 is that only 2 players got in.
Yeah.
That was a surprise.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know we talked about the last time you were on the show, people that we thought should be in the Pro Bowl. How many people did you think would make it into the Pro Bowl this year?
I believe I went on a whim and said 6.
Wow.
I was way off.
Yeah, it's I went back and I actually looked up the history of Pro Bowls, and I think 6 is the most that we've ever sent in 1 year. So that would have been a very interesting number if we would have hit. But I definitely think that we have 6 Pro Bowl worthy people on our team this year. That is no doubt. Well, for me, my number 3, actually for my criteria, I did open this up to all Pro Bowls in Buccaneer history. But for me, that just means they're ones that I would actually have to be aware of, which basically means from 1998 and forward. And also, this wasn't just a list of surprise people who made it into the Pro Bowl or didn't make it into the Pro Bowl, but I kind of took it at a broader look to see just anything about the Pro Bowl selection that surprised me. All right. So for my number 3, actually, I'm going all the way back to the year 2001. And a big surprise for me at the time was that Keyshawn Johnson made the Pro Bowl as a Buccaneer. And it was just a surprise to me. Now here's the thing. It's 2001. The Bucs are doing fantastic. There's lots of great things going on. This was a year that we had 6 players in the Pro Bowl that year. And so for me, it was the first time that I had ever really taken note of the Pro Bowl. Like I didn't grow up watching the NFL football, or football as a fan per se, because I just grew up in an area where we didn't really have a team. So it wasn't until I moved to Tampa that I became a fan of any team, and that team was the Buccaneers. But I don't know, for whatever reason, Keyshawn Johnson always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like he was just a guy I never really liked. And I mean, I don't want to take anything away from his football ability, but for whatever reason, and I can't explain it, he was a guy who rubbed me the wrong way. And so when he made it in, I was like, oh yeah. And I just remember being really surprised about Keyshawn Johnson. So for me, that's my number 3, Keyshawn Johnson making it in 2001.
Okay, I can totally see that.
And I don't know if you remember that at all. I don't think.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I have a hard time remembering. I enjoy the Pro Bowl for what it is. It's
for the game that doesn't matter.
Right, it doesn't matter, but right. I think it's fun. I think it's more of an entertainment thing rather than a competition thing.
Sure.
So I think it's an honor to be selected to go.
Mm-hmm.
And of course I want, my players to be rewarded for the good things that they've done. But, to remember who went to what Pro Bowls and how many Pro Bowls, like that's just not something I put too much focus in on. So no, I'm sorry. I don't remember that.
And God forbid anybody should go to a Pro Bowl and get hurt. Oh my word.
Right.
All right, so with that said, with as much as the Pro Bowl does matter or does not, Nikki, what is your number 2 Buccaneer Pro Bowl surprise?
I'm going to say number 2 biggest surprise was that Robert Ayers did not make it into the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
He's been phenomenal for us. When he was hurt, there was just a huge hole on that defensive line.
Yep.
And he elevates the play of Noah Spence and Gerald McCoy when he's in there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, McCoy is a big part of that whole system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he's in there. But yeah, I would say Ayers not getting in is a number 2 surprise for me.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. In fact, I don't know that Ayers has ever been. And one of you listeners out there, if you know Pro Bowl history or you know anything about Robert Ayers, if I'm wrong, please let me know. But I don't believe he's been in yet. And I dare say, had he been healthy during the Broncos game, there's just something about a player playing a former team that might have, knowing the edge that Robert Ayers kind of has on him, that might have thrust him a little bit more into the spotlight. But certainly I think you could safely say that Robert Ayers is a big reason why the Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense has been on such a hot streak that it has finally earned the Tampa Bay Buccaneers some national media recognition here over these last couple of weeks. That might have a little something to do with also winning 5 games in a row. So, that's a good pick, Robert Ayers. He was certainly one that I had on my list of Pro Bowl worthy players. For my number 2, actually, Nikki, I'm going back to what you had as your number 3, and I was shocked actually that only 2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers made it to the Pro Bowl this year, especially considering that we were voting during Tampa Bay's big 5-game winning streak. I really expected that Ali Marpet would be there. I just expected he would be there. I really did. That even though he was kind of this guy from an unknown school who is kind of on an unknown team really in the NFL, that he would. I just expected him to make it, especially seeing he was on what was it, Good Morning Football or something a couple weeks ago, and he's not even an alternate, I believe.
Oh, really?
I don't think he's an alternate. I might be wrong, but that shocked me. I really half expected Levante to be there, but I kind of understand why he's not. And I do know that we have several alternates that could up that number, but overall, it was really just it was that same pick and that you had of just there's only two. Huh. Interesting. So, all right, Nikki. Well, how about it for you? How about your number one, your biggest surprise about the Pro Bowl this year?
My biggest surprise, and this is really interesting to be arguing this, but I'm super, super irritated that Brian Anger was not the punter selected for the NFC. And so I looked it up, and the punter who was selected as the starting punter was Johnny Hekker of the Los Angeles Rams. And I was looking up his stats versus Brian Anger, and it looks like Hekker has about 21 more punts more than Brian Anger, as well as his longest punt is 78 yards versus Brian Anger's of 59 yards. And so I thought, okay, those are... And the averages, okay, let me see. The average for Brian Anger is 45.7, and Hekker averages 2.3 yards more. Okay, So looking at those things, I was like, okay, I can see why he was picked based off those numbers. Then I started thinking about it, and this isn't really based on film review or anything because I don't really care about the Rams, but... just knowing, thinking critically and logically about what we know about the Rams, they're not a very good team. Their offense struggles. And so my thought process behind this is that he has so many more punts because their offense does not move as much as ours does. So his services are required a lot more. Also, his longest punt would be 78 yards. Versus where Brian Anger's longest punt is 59 yards. And that's probably because by the time we need him, we're further into the field than maybe the Rams are. So I think that the punter selection needs to be based more on based on the context of the game, because Brian Anger just comes in so clutch at pinning them, within the 10 or the 5 or, not necessarily kicking the touchbacks. I think you would see that more with him than you would with Hekker. And I think, like I said, it's more of a contextual analysis, but I can't back that up 100% because I don't watch the Rams, just kind of going off of what I know logically.
Yeah, Does that
make any sense? Did I lose you?
No, that makes perfect sense because if our offense is making it further down the field before we require our punter services, he's of course going to, have shorter punts unless he's blasting it out the back of the end zone, and that would be the question I would ask: is how often is the Rams guy pinning it inside the 5-yard line or even the 10-yard line?
In the 20, okay, Brian Anger has 29 punts in the 20. And Hekker has 46, so 20 more, but he also has 20 more overall punts. Right. So,
but you said that's within the 20-yard line.
Within the 20-yard line.
But what we know about Brian,
I don't see a stat here.
Yeah, but we know about Brian is he pins it way down there,
But again, he's probably punting it at a closer distance,
right,
than would be the Rams, just because their offense maybe doesn't work as well as ours to move the chains.
Right.
So I think in terms of the numbers, I understand the pick, but I think contextually and for what the position requires, I don't think it would be the right decision. So I'm really irritated that Brian Anger wasn't the pick. And it's just really funny that that's my number one thing because he's the punter, but he's just been so vital for our special teams.
What pisses me off the most? It's the punter. Him and his long snapper, neither one of them. Yeah, well, he could snap that ball so long. Yeah, you know, hey, I think you and I both had Brian Anger, maybe as our number one people that we thought should make the Pro Bowl, and I still agree. And I think Brian, you know, honestly, I didn't know who Brian Anger was until he came to play for the Bucs. Now, granted, I don't follow too many other teams, especially their punters, but man, Brian Anger has shown up. And yeah, I was watching a Packers game the other day. I was like, oh, there's Jacob Shum. I remember him. And you know, no disrespect to him, but I'm with Anger. All right. Well, for my number one, actually, it's not this year's Pro Bowl. I'm going back to last year's Pro Bowl, and it was when Jameis wound up making the Pro Bowl roster. It was such a because it, you know, remember it came in late. And,
right.
You know, he was, I don't know what number alternate he was going down the list, but so many people had said, no, they're not going to participate in the Pro Bowl. A couple of them were actually in the Super Bowl. So
it was like the fifth alternate, I think. It was pretty, like, it was expensive.
It was deep. Let's face it. It was deep. But the fact is he made it. He got in there. And it was such, I mean, here's a rookie. Here's a guy that we all know and love, and we're getting to know and love him even more. And the fact that he made it in, it was just such a surprise. It was a good surprise. You know, and I don't care if he was the fifth alternate. It doesn't bother me. He made it. He made it in there. So that's why
it's on his resume.
There you go. And nobody can ever take it away from him. And you know, I think he's one of the alternates this year. I might be wrong, but yeah, Jameis Winston, my number one pick, making the roster. It surprised me, shocked me. All right. Well, do you have
your number one? Isn't Rondé Barber the year we went to the Super Bowl?
No.
Pro Bowl my ass. I'm going to San Diego.
Right.
Which is my all-time favorite quote ever.
Pro Bowl my ass. Yeah, seriously. Oh man. Well, Nikki, did you have any honorable mentions? Maybe some things you thought of that just didn't quite make your list?
I struggled between the heirs, and I think the other one would be Cameron Brate. I think he's well deserving of it.
Yeah,
the fact that he didn't make it pisses me off. But.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, there you go. He's a guy who has the most number of touchdowns as a tight end, and you know, I'll talk about Cameron a little bit in the next segment, but yeah, certainly for there. Honorable mentions, like I said, I had to go back and do a little bit of research just to check my facts. And here's something that I found out, and this surprised me while I was doing it. Did you know Vincent Jackson has only been to the Pro Bowl once as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer? And that was in 2012. I could have sworn he'd been more than that. Could have sworn. So surprised me that he had only been once as a Buccaneer and that it was so long ago. So I had that one. I had this one surprised me. I almost put this on there, that we had 5 people go to the Pro Bowl last year. And bear in mind, we were a 6-10 team, right?
Yeah.
Like quote unquote, we weren't really that good. And we still had 5 people go to the Pro Bowl, which I thought was pretty fantastic. I probably should have done a count and seen how often we've had more than 5 people go. You know, in a single year, but I thought that was real interesting, and that might have been where you came up with your number 6. You said, "Well, we had 5 last year, so we're better this year, so we should have number 6." Is that your propensity for liking one more?
No, yeah. Well, that's true, right? We'll talk about that in the next segment.
Right. Spoiler
no,
alert.
I don't know. You kind of caught me off guard last time I did this, and I just picked 6. That was totally, I just pulled it out.
There you go. That's all right. Well, and then I had one more, and it was this. Just a little fun stat about Pro Bowl for a game that really doesn't matter. Matters less than, I think, even the preseason games, aside from just the honor of it, is this. There have only been 8 players who have made it to the Pro Bowl 5 or more times. And number 8 is Gerald McCoy. Congratulations, Gerald, for entering that little club. Only 8 other players have made it to the Pro Bowl 5 or more times. Those players are, just in case anybody's curious, Derek Brooks, Warren Sapp, Mike Allstott, Rondé Barber, Hardy Nickerson, and John Lynch, and Leroy Selman. And then that follows up Gerald McCoy.
That's not nicely. A bad group of people to be with.
Not a bad group of people to be in at all. So there we go. All right, fans. Well, now we'd like to know how your picks stack up against our picks. You can let me know on Twitter at the PewterCast or on Facebook.com/the PewterCast, or you can email me, thepewtercast@gmail.com. And Nikki, before we get out of here, why don't we take a look at this week's poll?
It's real bad. Okay? I don't like those numbers at all.
Just one poll. Those things aren't scientific.
Yes, they are. All this is science. This is math.
All right, well, for this week, we asked which Buck didn't make the Pro Bowl that you think should have. And we picked one from the defense, one from the offense, one from special teams, where we said Levante David, Ali Marpet, Brian Enger, or we always left open a write-in option. Now, Nikki, you just gave us a couple of people, but I think I might know who you would have gone with. Who do you think should have made the Pro Bowl, who didn't?
I voted. It was Brian Enger.
There, Brian Enger. Yeah, Brian Enger. He certainly was one that got clicked on quite a bit. And Brian Enger won our poll at 38%. Ali Marpet came in at 29%. An equal number actually tweeted back their own choice, and Levante David just got 5%. So not much love for Levante there, but that's okay. Some people who tweeted back, Cameron Brate was the one who actually, 4 people tweeted back and said it should be Cameron Brate, who also should have gotten in, which, by the way, you had mentioned him as well, Nikki, in your topic. Well, guys, that's going to do it for this segment. Stay with us, guys. We're going to be right back. We've got a very special guest who's going to be coming into the show. We're going to do a special fan-to-fan live, and that's going to encapsulate both the game film review and this final segment. So stay with us, guys. We'll be right back. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Right now for you, PewterCast fans, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. And an Audible subscription makes the perfect Christmas gift for that loved one who loves to read but is always on the go. This month I'm recommending the book The Martian by Andy Weir. This is the novel that the Matt Damon movie is based on, and if you liked the movie like I did, then I know you're going to love this book. It's the story of an astronaut who is mistakenly left behind on the planet Mars and has to figure out how to survive until the next rescue mission can come get him in 4 years. And this is a rare time when I will tell you that due to the nature of how it's written, it's actually better to listen to the audiobook than it is to actually read the paper version of the book. To download your free audiobook, go to audibletrial.com/thepewtercast. Again, that's audibletrial.com/thepewtercast for your free audiobook. And we're back. This is episode 25 of the PewterCast, and for today's discussion segment, we're going to spend some time addressing some of the questions and comments that have been floating around out there in Bucs Fandom this week. And I know I've personally been fielding a handful of questions from some listeners who've tweeted me or emailed me in and sought my opinion, which I'm honored and I'm humbled that you guys would ask, and I gave you back my opinion. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we have a special guest joining Nikki and I for this segment. And he's here. Now, this guy is perhaps one of, outside of myself, is the one who is most responsible for the PewterCast coming into existence. Because honestly, if he didn't create a void, I would never have tried to fill it. So I'm honored to finally have on the segment, to finally get on the show, Chris Fisher, formerly of the Bucs and Briefs podcast. Chris, how's it going, my friend?
You call me special, and I'm the reason for your podcast happening. Like, how can you set the bar any higher for me for appearing on your show?
Well, don't.
Can I point out that he called you Bucs and Briefs?
Did I really?
Say,
no, he's Bucs Briefs.
Bucs
Briefs. Bucs Brief Podcast is what it is. The Bucs Brief.
All right. We had a couple T-shirts that were printed. They didn't sell very well, so it's okay.
Hey, I have one, and I still wear it.
That's right. I saw my friend this weekend was wearing it as well, so people are still out there representing the work that I did, which is appreciated.
I got to tell you, when I first started the PewterCast, Chris, I had a hell of a time trying to create a logo that wasn't just a complete derivative off of yours. And honestly, what I came up with was just a Buccaneer helmet on a pewter background with the words "the PewterCast."
There you go.
So it went quite simple. So, well, Chris, man, thanks so much for joining us for this segment. Honestly, this segment right here is why I had asked both of you guys to be on the show this week, because I was watching how you guys specifically were responding to people and what some people were saying, particularly following the game here in Dallas this last week. And I said, let's see if we can get them together and kind of put a nail in the coffin of some of these ideas that are hanging around. So for today, we're going to be doing a familiar segment we've done on the show quite a few times called Fan to Fan Live. And really the idea of this segment is like we're at a bar or we're sitting on a back porch with all the fans of Buccaneerdom, and we're kind of having this heart to heart, so to speak, and just kind of, what would we want to say if we were just talking to each other. And that's kind of the idea here. So guys, I'll let you, I kind of have like a small list of topics that I have seen Bucs fans discussing this week that I can kind of point to, but I want to open it up to you guys first and see if there's anything specific you'd like to talk about with the fans. And Chris, since you're the guest on this particular segment, man, I'll open the floor to you first, my friend.
All right, absolutely. I think the Princess will probably echo my feelings on this, but after the Dallas loss, national TV primetime, I think we had a little bit of a relapse back to about 8 weeks ago when the narrative was let's just blow everything up and start all over because the team isn't going anywhere. The team rattled off 5 wins in a row, played probably one of their poorest games that we have seen, yet and was still in the fourth quarter and an opportunity to win that football game against the top team in the NFL, a team who has only lost to one other team in their house. So I think at that point, if folks paid attention to what was going on in that game, we saw the turnovers, we saw the struggles with the offensive line, we saw the defensive having some problems early on. People need to chill the heck out and understand that the team was in it till the end. They don't need to blow everything up. It's not that now Jameis now needs to be benched for Mike Lennon and now start Jacquizz Rodgers over Doug Martin. All this crazy crap that gets tossed around out there. And understand that the deficiencies that were there the week before against New Orleans showed up again in Dallas. The problem was they were playing a better football team in Dallas, and Dallas right now is a better football team. Chill out. The things need to get corrected. The offensive line, Dirk needs to figure out something to draw up plays that are not such long developing routes, quick throws, get the ball out of Jameis' hands early with this offensive line who is just turnstiles right now and just not protecting Jameis and not opening up run holes for the running backs either. So chill out. It was one loss. They'd won 5 in a row. If we would have asked you, Brent, or you, Princess, can I call you Princess or I have to call you Nikki? What do you want me to call you?
Either, it works either way.
Would you guys have taken 8 wins to, at the beginning of this year, seeing, I just wanted last year, show some progress, win more than you won the year before, and show some potential to move forward and show that there's a positive uptick on this team. And I'm seeing that right now. Look, we're in December. The Bucs are playing meaningful football. They have an opportunity if they win these next 2 games to make the playoffs. I didn't feel they were going to be in this position at the beginning of the year. I'm cool as a Bucs fan. Things are trending upward. Fans need to chill the heck out.
Well said. And I think you actually touched on every single topic that I have.
Oops, sorry.
No, it's fine. It's great. That's exactly where we wanted to bring it on. And, to your point of, and I want to jump on this one first, where you said, let's go back to the beginning of the year and talk about what we actually expected out of the Bucs this year. And the vast majority of people that I saw said 8-8, that's where they wanted to be, was 8-8, maybe 9-7, kind of edge it just a little over the 500 mark. But that was what most people were saying. I remember very clearly people saying, listen, this team's not going to the playoffs. They're definitely not going to the Super Bowl. I just, let's just get to, let's get some more wins than what we had last year, and have 8-8. And, the truth is no matter what happens for the rest of the season, we will at least be at 8-8, no matter what happens.
Absolutely.
Of course, we've all kind of got playoff fever now, which is, and maybe rightly so, but
I do not.
There, okay, all but one, or maybe a handful. Well, Nikki, talk about that. Go ahead.
Okay, well, for me, the only thing I'm pulling a little bit of a Belichick here, and it's not because I'm trying to copy that or anything, but it's just kind of how I handle being a Bucs fan. Almost every year. For me, like you said, what were my expectations? I always want one game more than the previous season. So if we were 6-10, I was hoping for 7-9, just because to me that tells me we're in the right direction. And more, what's more important to me is seeing the building blocks, right? So last year was about laying a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we did that. And I was a little concerned about, after we blew up the whole coaching staff again and whatever, and we were able to keep some of the stability, which was fantastic. And this year was about starting to lay those bricks. And I see that happening, right? So next year it's whatever our record is, I want one more game, right? And so anything over that, I just like to kind of be realistic. I don't want to set my expectations low because I know that sounds really bad for a fan. I'm not rooting against this team to make the playoffs or rooting against them to go to the Super Bowl. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, I'd rather set an expectation at a reasonable level and be super surprised and happy and appreciative when we exceed those expectations rather than having such a high bar and being let down. Because I feel like as a whole, our fan base has just been, that feeling of being let down has just been so hard. So this is kind of how I spare myself. So for me, the only thing that matters right now is New Orleans. Last week, the only thing that mattered was Dallas. I don't care about who needs to win or who needs to lose for us to make the playoffs. I will worry about the playoffs after Carolina. If we're there, awesome. If we're not, then, I'm not disappointed because this season for me has been a success in terms of what I wanted to see.
Yeah,
So that's why I don't want to have I don't have playoff fever. I will worry about that after Carolina.
The Allie Marpet and Donovan Smith were talking about on their radio show this week, that very same concept of, when you start getting into all the scenarios, and God bless Greg Allman for these last couple of days, who just seems like he's been answering every single, all right, now what if this team loses and we win here, but that team over there has this, and what if the humidity is just right on this day, and what if the moon is in its full phase? Like, will we make it then? And
the bottom line is, if we handle our business each week, there's a chance we don't make it.
Right.
So all we need to focus on is our business, and right now our business is New Orleans.
Right. And
how about leave Greg Allman alone, fans? Leave him alone. He's got a family. He's got things to worry about. Figure out the playoff scenarios on your own. Come on.
They're posted online.
Exactly, but exactly what Nikki said. Just the Bucs need to take it game to game, like we do, and this is what I try to focus fans on. Don't look 5 weeks ahead. Focus on week to week. This is a tough matchup. I expect New Orleans to come out on fire this week after the way their offense played. The Bucs offense has been struggling, but we got to take it week to week. If the Bucs don't win this week, guess what? Don't worry about the playoff scenarios because it's done. That's it. Okay, win this week, and then we'll talk about in week 17 what could possibly happen if they knock off the Panthers.
Right, exactly. And that's,
and only after we knock off the Panthers do I have any interest in talking about the playoffs. But that's just me personally. I understand it's wonderful to have the optimism. You say it's great to play relevant football in December. I was just happy to play relevant football in October. I mean, let's be real. How many seasons have we been done by week 3?
It's true. That was around the time where people are saying to blow the team up because of the struggles they were having. Oh
yeah, we were 3-5 and everybody sucks. And,
it was like week 3 or 4. People were like, I just got this feeling if we lose this one, we're done for the season. We might as well start talking about the draft next year. And we're going up against the Cardinals.
When you guys are ready, I just want to share a little side conversation.
I think we're ready. Go ahead, Nikki. Go for it.
So this was, and it kind of goes off of how Chris started off the conversation. But right after, I have a friend here local to Albuquerque who texts me every so often after Bucs games, and he tends to be quite on the negative side of things, right? And I understand we're all very tired of being patient. I get it. I really do. So I didn't hear from him too much during this 5-game win streak, right? So he texts me afterwards, and it's like, when do we finally admit that Jameis is just a liability and he's a cheerleader with terrible accuracy, blah, blah, blah. And so this is what my response to him was, we knew that since college, and, he's trying to do way too much on his own, but I think the O-line deserves more blame for this one. And this was his conversation. He said, he missed so many open throws. Defense did enough to give him a chance. Shame on me for getting my hopes up, though. I should have known better, right? And so this is kind of that sentiment that's been echoed throughout the fan base. So this was my response. And I actually took this text message and I broke it up into a couple tweets because what I was seeing on my timeline was completely embodied by this conversation. So this was my response. Calm down. We are leaps and bounds from where we were. We just won 5 games in a row and we still have a winning record. Don't fall back into old habits for losing by 6 to one of the best teams in the NFL. We've made plenty of mistakes and we didn't get blown out. And I think that's huge to take from this game. I mean, as bad as we may have played, we were like Chris said, we were in it until the last second. I mean, we had the chance to win. Now, it didn't turn out that way. We didn't execute well enough. You know, we got beat up on the O-line, but we were in it and we held them to field goals most of the time. So that tells me that we're not that bad for as bad as we played, and they're not that good for, you know, only beating us by 6 when we were kind of, in a sense, shooting ourselves in the foot. Granted, not as bad as we have in the past, but still, you know, there's a lot to build off of here.
Yeah, that's in the words of another show, you just nailed it, Nikki. Why don't we take a look, just because you just mentioned it, and this might be a very, very brief conversation, but let's take a look at some of these things that people are saying. And Nikki, you just mentioned one. We were talking about the playoffs. Now let's move over to this idea, and I've seen this floated around out there a couple of times, of let's bench Jameis and put in Mike Glennon. Chris, what about it, man? Can't even dignify.
Is that
along?
No. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
It's just along the lines of looking at someone's one single stat line and saying that they should be playing over the other player. The call to the backup quarterback is always an interesting one. It's almost unfathomable, especially when Jameis Winston is your starting quarterback. For folks who think that Mike Glennon is a better quarterback than Jameis Winston, I don't know what to tell you, because you're an idiot. I mean, that's basically as simple as I can explain it. He is a backup quarterback for a reason. He will most likely not be re-signed and will go somewhere else. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why this team has potentially shopped him over the last few years, no matter what they say. Jameis Winston is the starting quarterback. I don't know why you would make a move at this point. It's perplexing. I don't even know how to explain it, because to me it makes absolutely zero sense. Jameis Winston is the starting quarterback. He did not play his best game against Dallas. The offensive line has played their 2 worst football games over the last 2 weeks. While he was inaccurate and he made some bad decisions, he was also running for his life at times, under pressure, especially towards the end of the game, and they had no running game either. So of course he was going to struggle. Jameis is your starting quarterback, and he's going to be for many years. So you better learn to live with it, unless he has an injury. That's his only opportunity that he's going to come out of the game. So that, to me, that's just absolutely insane.
Nikki?
I have no words. Like, it's completely crazy. I'm sorry. Like, I get that Jameis has been struggling, but like Chris said, a lot of that is, you know, the offensive line isn't as deep as they should be, you know, and granted, they've gotten deeper. I mean, remember 2 seasons ago, all we did was harp on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. And when healthy, they're pretty damn good. I mean, they're not great, but they're pretty damn good. And we've had some injury issues, and, you know, we see what happens, even though DeMar Dotson is a penalty waiting to happen on, you know, gains over 12 yards. But, you know, when we take him out of the game and put other people in, or like poor Gosder, he just got beat up this week. So did Allie, but so has Donovan Smith. You know, but like when they're all healthy and playing well, they're pretty damn good. And that helps Jameis. The offensive line has been, you know, they're the motor that drives the car.
Yeah.
And if the motor's not working, the car struggles, right?
Let me add one thing to this equation, because I think the move to Glennon is an interesting one. If folks go back and look at specific plays, you can go back all the way to the Chicago game where Jameis made that incredible play to get away from pressure and threw the ball deep to Mike Evans. Where is that going to happen when you have Mike Glennon at quarterback? He is the most immobile statue you will see. Okay. The plays that Jameis has made by escaping pressure, and sometimes he makes mistakes and sometimes he's inaccurate with the ball, but some of the plays that have been made this season on this team would not happen without Jameis Winston at quarterback. It's absolutely insane to want to go back to an immobile quarterback who's not going to get out of that pressure and not be able to make the plays that Jameis can make. It makes zero sense.
Right. And you got a guy who, you know, let's face it, Glennon is not exactly leading the team. And able to pull, you know, there's such a thing as people fighting for you, you know, and just listening to any of these other players when they go on a show and say, people ask them the question all the time, what's it like with Jameis? And the thing that they come back with is, he's such a leader, he makes you want to play for him. People are wanting to play for him, not just with him. And here's the thing. So I've spent some time trying to figure out why, where is this idea even coming from? Where is it germinating from? What is the inception of this idea? And the only thing I can think about is if you look around the league and see, there's a handful of times this year where a backup quarterback has stepped in for a starting quarterback and has either kept the job or won the job. And, we're seeing that this week going on down with Houston. With Brock Osweiler getting sat and his backup's now in, and he's already been declared the new starting quarterback for next week. Honestly, it's what we saw with Dallas, right? Tony Romo gets hurt. Dak Prescott comes in as a backup, as a rookie backup nonetheless, and basically plays Tony Romo out of a job.
I will add to this, and it just, where does it come from? It comes from the fans, right? I remember last season, I thought this was hilarious, and I may have brought it up last year on another show or something, but it was when the Patriots lost 2 games last season, 2 games in a row, and I was listening to NFL radio, and one of the Patriots fans called in, and literally his question was, "Is it time to hit the panic button?" I'm like, y'all have won 10 games straight or whatever it was and just lost 2, and you guys want to hit the panic button? Chill out. Right. But that's just how fan culture, we talked about this last time. Fan culture is just very impulsive, very reactive, very, they regurgitate what they hear. We were talking off air about, the cancers that have the voice and the platform throughout the fan base. And if they say one thing, it spreads. And there's no actual backing to it. Chris does the analysis that I know he's so good at. I just go off of what I see. I don't have the time to do all that stuff, but not like I used to. But it's just that's where it comes from. It's just fans. That's part of fan culture. It's just being completely reactionary and impulsive.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we can just put a cap on this by saying, no, we're not benching Jameis, and that's stupid, and stop talking about that. All right, we've mentioned this a few times, and Chris, I'd love to hear a little bit more from you on this. Of just say you've said a couple times, the offensive line has played their worst 2 games in these last couple of games, and specifically with this game. Let's talk about the offensive line and what needs to happen. And I'll tell you where this is coming from for me is because I went back and did I did a pretty in-depth film study earlier today, specifically watching the offensive line and Doug Martin, those 2 guys specifically, and and I charted out just this one game. I didn't do both, but I just did the one game of really how the offensive line went. So I've got a few thoughts scribbled down here, but I just wanted to see kind of from you what do you have to say about the offensive line and how they're playing?
Sure. If we focus on just the rushing attack, and when you look at box scores, and I caution people for this to just focus on box scores because it's only telling partial story. You can look at data, and then you can go and look at the film, and you can look at play-by-play and things and understand why things are happening to get more of a complete picture when it comes to presenting your opinions and then using factual data or your opinion backed up with data to present your argument. And that's the major problem that I have right now with some folks is that everything that they present comes off of a single stat, off of a box score, and it's not telling the full story. Right. So we can say one thing about the running game against Dallas. Dallas has the number 1 rushing defense in the NFL. Okay, that's number 1. The last 3 teams that the Bucs have played have been in the top 13 in rushing defense in the NFL. Just so happens the rushing has suffered over the last 3 weeks. Now, you can look at specifically what's happening in the offensive line, and I can point to a couple things. One, it's not just a single player. As much as Gosder Sherless has struggled over the last 2 games, it's not only on him. Ali Marpet is usually the most consistent offensive lineman. He's pretty consistent. I love Joe Hawley to death. He is fantastic. I love his beard. I think his family is great, but he is getting absolutely pushed around these last 2 weeks. He's getting out-physicaled. It's the same thing we see from Kevin Pamphile. It's the same thing we see from Donovan Smith. They are losing one-on-one matchups. They are not sustaining blocks, and there's miscommunication when the Saints were running stunts and not knowing who has who. One of the things that has impacted the offensive line, and I'll go back to Dirk Cutter and the play calling, we are not going jumbo to help out the running game. Luke Stalker was out, just got back recently. I don't know if it's because of with the Dotson injury, if then you have to move Wester to the jumbo pack and the jumbo package when you've got Cherylus there at right tackle, but they've gone away from that. Typically, when they go jumbo, they are successful. This offense as a whole, if you look at what they've done, their body of work over the season, the pass blocking is okay. The run blocking across the entire season, when you look at it from game 1 to what did we just finish, game 15, 14, week 15, it's been very poor. It's toward the bottom of the league. So where this team is struggling right now, they're not imposing their will on the defense. They're getting absolutely pushed around. They're getting mauled. They are not out physicaling, if that's a word. If not, we're going to make it a word tonight. The other side of the ball. So you can point to many things on that. Bottom line with this, and I'm sure you've seen this in the film breakdown that you've done, Brent, the offensive line has now regressed over these last few weeks, and they need to turn it around, because if not, they're going to get physically dominated this week. And unless Dirk makes some type of adjustments and tries to get the ball out quickly, which I hope he's not going to be stubborn like he was against Dallas, we're going to see kind of the same thing that we've seen over the last few weeks.
Yeah. I'll comment on that in just a minute. But Nikki, I want to give you a chance to jump in on this particular topic. If you have anything, you may not.
I don't think I do. I think Chris said pretty much everything. And I mean, he does the film breakdowns. I haven't had that time my semester just ended. Okay, let me relax for a bit.
Sure. Yeah, and here, let me explain to folks if they don't know who I am before. I podcast, so I talk a lot. Okay, so I put a lot of information out there. So I ramble on and on and on, and I give you a lot of information and a lot of data. So I have to apologize for that. I can't present in short segments, and I don't
believe that's something you should ever apologize for.
And I don't have Mark Cook talking over me every 5 seconds either. So shout out to Mark Cook. All right.
Well, if there's one thing I can do is certainly be quiet for a few minutes and let people talk, because I have a 4-year-old. When I look at this, and I specifically, when I went into the game breakdown, wanted to look at the offensive line, because this was something that I kept hearing about, and I've mentioned on my show before, I used to play offensive line, so I might be a little bit biased to that position. But it also means that I tend to know more of what's going on the offensive line. Like I can pick that apart, even though I certainly never played professional myself. But here's what I can say. As far as Gosder Cherylus specifically, let me back up. I remember watching the game, and the feeling I got from watching the game was, man, the offensive line isn't doing anything. The offensive line is getting beat around. And I even posed the question on the Instant Cast show, is Gosder Cherylus done? Like, should he just retire at the end of the season? And it's probably still a worthy conversation for him and his family to have. But it's not one that... It's one I want to come back and say, because after looking at the film and going through every single play of just this one last game, I can't speak too much to the Saints game or anything like that. But here's the thing. It wasn't until the fourth quarter that I saw on the film that I even had a note about Gosder Cherylus, that he missed a block or he missed an assignment or he held somebody or anything. It wasn't until the fourth quarter. He actually did his job the vast majority of the game. Now, once we got to the fourth quarter, he got killed every single play. And I don't know at what point they say he had an injury. I'm not sure at what point he did that. And then they put Wester in, and there was a few times that Wester came in on a jumbo package, even there in the fourth quarter and before, and he missed almost every single block on every single play that he was in, which was crazy to me, because let's put Wester in, let's get him in there. But he really missed just about every single play and block that he had. Now, that said, the one that surprised me the most, that had the most notes that I had in here, was Marpet. I was shocked to see how many times he missed a block or somebody checked off of him and wound up stopping the runner or getting to Jameis a little bit earlier than he really should have. But to that point, I mean, I can go back and look through here and say, for the most part, the offensive line on the vast majority of plays actually did pretty well. When things broke down, it was mostly the other people who were around who were supposed to be blocking. So it was the tight ends. Occasionally it was a wide receiver who was supposed to be picking up a block or something of that nature. However, that said, every single one of the players this week of the offensive linemen still had a missed block that basically ended that play, that negated that play for one reason or another. So, it's definitely a thing to talk about, of saying that the offensive line has to get better. There has to be some stuff that steps up, because you look at even the offensive line for Dallas, and that was something I was noticing. The offensive line it's like they would almost pick up our defenders and move them wherever they wanted to so that their runners could get through the hole. And our offensive line never did that. They never fully, they didn't move people where they really wanted to go. They just were able to keep the block or hold a pocket. Their pass protection was actually fairly decent. But Nikki, you were going to go ahead and say something. Go ahead.
To give credit where credit is due, right? And this is something that has been happening for a while, and I'm sure Chris can probably even speak to it more than I can. But for several years during the Cowboys not being anything special, they've been building their lines through the draft. I don't remember up until recently, with the Zeke Elliott kind of picks, that they really drafted any of the skill positions. It was all within their trenches, and their offensive line and defensive line over the years and developing those players. And like I said, Chris could probably speak to it better than I can, but from what I can remember, Dallas tended to draft for their lines, and it shows, it's been showing the last couple of years. So I think that they deserve credit for what they've done. And I think that I know it's way early for draft talk for real, but I think it wouldn't hurt us to draft a little bit more along our lines, just for depth, because I think we've done well. But I think that we just need a little bit more help, and I think that Dallas has done that for themselves, and that's why their lines are so good.
Yeah, and
I'll touch. Do you mind if I touch on a couple things, Brent?
Go ahead.
So just to back up what Nikki's saying there. So since 2011, they've gone with their first pick a few times. Have been in the first round have been offensive linemen. They went Tyron Smith in 2011. They're starting left tackle. In 2013, they went center with Travis Frederick, in the first round. And then they also went 2014 Zach Martin in the first round out of Notre Dame. And then also we know what happened. They got Lyle Collins as well. So yes, they have been building up front. They've also been taking defensive linemen or linebackers in that, transition from the 3-4 to Rod Marinelli's defense. And then you build that line, and then you go out and you get Zeke Elliott, who is clearly the best running back in this draft. And you see how it's working. Brent, I want to just mention a couple things based on what you said. And I know everyone's going to harp on Gosser Chairless, but I promise folks, Gosser Chairless was never meant to be the starter at right tackle this year on this team. He's up there in age. He has health issues with his lower body. He was in there, and he serviced as a that swing tackle when they went to the jumbo package. Don't expect he's not built to be a starter in this league at this point. Okay, they're paying him a decent amount of money, but that's just how it worked out with the contract. Physically, he can't do it as a full-time starter in this league. Nothing against the guy. He's a great locker room guy. Ali Marpet's struggles have come up in the last two games, in my opinion, and that's based on the fact of the guy that's playing next to him. So I caution fans when you're calling for DeMar Dotson to be benched. It's one of those things, and you can reference the Cinderella song, don't know what you got till it's gone. As average as folks think that Dotson is, he's better than what's behind him. As average as folks think Doug Martin might be, when he went down, Charles Sims did nothing different than what Doug Martin was doing. So it's a little bit of that. These guys, trust in the coaching staff. These guys are starting for a reason. They're in front of the other guy for a reason. They're probably smarter than you, and they probably know a hell of a lot more about football than you do. So that's probably why those guys are in there.
Yeah, and just to, if I could highlight one thing that you just said there, when you talk about, just as an example for the whole thing, when you talk about Marpet's struggles, you've got to look at the guy who's next to him. And that's 100% true as far as how the teams are reacting. And, as you said, Chairless isn't built to be a starter. He's not built to go all four quarters, and that really showed up in this game in the fourth quarter, where he just got beat on almost every single play once you hit to that particular that particular quarter, and you got to watch out who's behind them. And Nikki, to your point of building through the draft, if I could put on my my Derek Fournier hat and go, great, but what other positions are we not going to draft in lieu of, drafting for the offensive line? And that's a question I think to be had once we hit the offseason. We don't have to have it right now. But I do want to move on, and I want to talk about one more thing, Chris, before we let you go and we close out this segment. And I think it's probably the big thing. I think it's the one that gets under my skin the most. It probably gets under your skin the most. It definitely sounds like it. In fact, Chris, I'm sure I know for a fact you got a little slap on the hand. I think it was earlier today from another Bucs media outlet for getting blocked on Twitter for talking about it so much. The idea of sitting Doug Martin and instead putting in Jacquizz Rodgers. I've received more questions about this personally this week than any other question I've received the entire year, probably combined. And so why don't we talk about old Dougie, muscle hamster, Dugginator, whatever we want to call him this year?
To give full credit, I'm now unblocked. So just to throw that out there, I am now unblocked on Twitter by said media outlet. Whatever went down today, and I feel I had justified questions and reasons for asking those type of questions, and I didn't feel like they were answered. But that being said, here's the deal with Doug Martin, and I want folks to understand this. I believe you can point to a couple things with Doug, and I'll get you guys engaged in this. I'm sorry for talking so much. So here are the things that I can point to that I can say you may have a valid argument for things that Doug Martin does wrong. One is the injuries. Okay, so that's valid, right? Doug misses games. In 1 year he's healthy, 1 year he's not.
Okay.
But I turn around and ask then, what running back that plays for the Bucs this year has not been injured and has missed multiple games? Chuck Sims has missed multiple games over his last 2 years. Anton Smith, who got picked up off the street, is hurt. Jacquizz Rodgers was hurt for multiple games. I think Peyton Barber.
I was going to say, I don't think Peyton Barber's been hurt.
Bernard Reedy has not been hurt yet this year. He's been cut a few times and not made the game, but he's not been hurt.
So if you look at it across the whole, injuries, I get it.
Mike James got hurt. He's out.
There you go. So I think that's a valid argument. But then you look at, what running back has played this year and has stayed healthy when they get the full booklet of carries. Number two is his fumbles. I think he had a great year last year, a career year, probably close to the best of his career. I still argue his rookie year might have been a better year. He had a fumble problem. Okay, he had 5 fumbles. I think it was 5 fumbles lost last season. He lost 1 this year. Okay, so he's improved in that area. I think the big question mark and what people ask, and this is what drives me absolutely insane because it can't be quantified with actual data. He was only playing well last year because it was his contract year.
My word.
Okay, Now to me, I think it's human nature that, yes, you're probably going to want to show up and be in top physical condition. And if you know it's your contract year, right? Will Golson's playing his tail off this year, just happens to be a contract year, right? Sometimes it's just how it works out. Now, I can tell folks 100% that Doug showed up in the same condition to training camp this year after receiving his contract than the same shape he showed up last year. Okay, so 2 years in a row, Doug has worked his tail off in the offseason and has shown up in top physical condition. If you look at effort, okay, fighting for extra yards, fighting to get into the end zone when the play is blown up, he is still putting forth the effort. So if you look at that, I think you can throw that directly out the window because the effort is there with Doug Martin. He's not out of shape. He didn't come in Donald Penn shape, okay, in training camp. So people can throw that out the window. The other thing, and Brent, I think you were alluding to this, is folks say, well, these other running backs did better. And I challenge folks to look at the games and go down and look at statistical rankings and break down and look at what happened in each individual game because Jacquizz Rodgers is better. He produced when he was in there. 2 games this year. Ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead, Brent.
Chris, Doug's only averaging 2.3 yards per carry, and Jacquizz is averaging 3.4 yards per carry.
Okay, well, what is Jacquizz average over the last 2 games when this offensive line has struggled? You want to know? 0.0 yards per carry because he had 2 carries. It was -1 and +1, and he didn't play. He didn't dress in the last game.
Right.
So again, trust the coaching staff. They're going to dress the guys who they think are going to contribute to this team. Go back and look at the one game out of the 14. Where are we at? 14 now that we play this year. the one game the running game played well was against the San Francisco 49ers, who just happened to be, just coincidence, folks, the absolute worst rushing defense in the NFL and give up over 176 yards a game. It just so happens that that's when the running game blew up. You could stick Mike James back there. You could stick Doug Martin, Charles Sims, Anton Smith, Peyton Barber. You could stick Derek Fournier back there, and they're going to run for 100 yards against the San Francisco 49ers. The other game where we had a back that went over 100 was against Carolina. What do you guys remember what we did that game? Do you recall what happened in the first half against the Carolina Panthers on Monday Night Football without Cam Newton? Either one of you?
Kuechly got hurt.
Well, they pounded the ball. They pounded the ball.
But didn't he get hurt in that game, or was that the game before us?
I don't think. Yeah, he might have been out that game. Or it was Thomas Davis was beat up that game. I remember. Point being that they pounded and pounded and pounded and pounded the ball. And if you track, they had 72 rushing yards out of the running back position out of Jacquizz. He finished with 101. So it's consistent with what we've seen. Start strong, get a couple of these 8-yard runs, 6-yard runs, 5-yard runs, trickle into -1, the -2, the 0. But what this team hasn't done, and you see physically they're getting worn out towards the end of the game.
Yep.
The defenses are challenging them to throw the football. They are stacking the box. I challenge folks, look at what happens at the end of games and how they bring 9 guys into the box. They are challenging Jameis and challenging this offense to try and beat them by throwing over the top. And this team is not doing it. The defenses are stopping the run, and the Bucs are not taking advantage of the single matchups they're getting on the outside. I take that. That's a coaching decision, and that's on Jameis to make those checks. So everything that's out there for folks, okay, you can go and look at it. You can go and be incomplete when presenting your analysis, and you can look at one single stat line at yards per carry, but you're not looking at the full context and everything that's out there. And I'm telling everyone, the entire rushing game has struggled this year. Every single running back's production is down. Jacquizz Rodgers was picked up off the streets. If he's so great and he's so much better than every other running back on this roster, then why did 31 other teams not pick him up and the Bucs did? So I love the fact that I think all three of these guys, and throw in Peyton Barber there. There you go, Princess, for your Auburn guy. There you go. I think all 4 of these guys can produce when this offense is executing and doing their jobs. Brent, you mentioned earlier, the guys on the outside are not blocking. They are not sustaining blocks. When a long run busts open, it's because the guys on the outside, the tight end, the slot receiver, the outside guys, have all sustained blocks or picked up a block. They're not doing that. It's showing up on film. I promise everyone, Doug is still the best option at running back on this team. Has he lost a step? He's getting old. He's coming off injury, okay? But he's still the best option that they have at running back. I promise you, the data points to that. The film points to that. The coaching decisions point to that. If they bench him and they go Jacquizz, I'll say I'm wrong. And if Jacquizz produces, fantastic. I'll say I'm wrong. I'm not wrong, though, folks. Promise.
You know, Chris, let me throw a little stat out at you and everyone who is listening to this from the Dallas game. This is just from the Dallas game. I went back and I looked at it, and I had said, out of our offensive line, our worst offensive linemen in this game were the tight ends, and that's all of them. That's Stocker, that's Myers, that's Honcho, that's Cameron Brate. But I went back and I looked specifically at Doug Martin's runs, and I cataloged each and every single one of them, and I redid his yards per carry average, and what I did was I took out all of the runs, and I know you really can't do this overall, for the big number, but I took out all the ones that had blown up, that had nothing to do with Doug. It was somebody who missed their block that completely sealed in the hole. It was somebody who, it was something that Doug had nothing to do with. That Doug did his job. There was just nothing else that he could have done. I left in ones where Doug maybe made a bad decision. And here's what I went back and I looked and I realized. I did the math on it, and Doug averaged 4.9 yards per carry when he was blocked well for, and he was the one who was fully responsible for whatever happened throughout the rest of the play. That's that when the offensive line is doing their job, when other people who are blocking are doing their job, Doug is averaging 4.9 yards per carry. The 2.1 or the 2.3 or whatever that number is, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, is coming because he's getting. The other one I took out was when it's a short yardage situation. It's a second and goal or a two. It's 2 yards to the goal, and that's all they're trying to get to. He's not trying to bust out for a big yard, a big gainer. I kind of took those out. And
wait, Brent,
yeah.
you're taking into consideration that they're lined up on the 1 yard line, so it's going to be either a 0 or a 1 yard per carry.
Yeah.
How dare you actually bring facts into your statistical analysis?
Or it's a 3rd and 1 situation or a 3rd and 2 situation, and that's all he's trying to do is do a smash play right up the middle to grab those 2 yards to get a first down. I took those out because that doesn't show Doug Martin when he's trying to break off for a big run. Okay, now the thing that I if I had to bring a negative, here's what we've not really seen a ton out of Doug Martin that we did see last year, was we're not seeing those big yards after contact. He's not shaking off the tackles like he did last year, and that may go to be what you said. He's coming off of injury, maybe he's getting a little bit older. Maybe he's just getting that hit that much harder at the line, and he just, who knows what it is. I can't say much for that. But for when he is responsible for what he's doing, he's averaging 4.9 yards per carry. And that is a statistical fact as far as, it was a little bit up to me what I left in and what I didn't. But those were kind of the criteria that I used. It was 4.9 yards per carry. So that right there tells me, no, we're not going to sit Doug Martin. We're not going to come in and play Jacquizz Rodgers. We're going to play Doug Martin, and we should. And he's well worth his $35 million contract that he got.
I'm doing math as you're going through that because I like your style, Brent, and it's very similar to the statistical analysis. And I'll do this as we're wrapping up. But I was looking at the chart that I did from the Saints game. And Doug's yards per carry. So just so folks know, out of the 23 carries that Doug got against the Saints, 11 of those carries there was contact made at or behind the line of scrimmage, meaning that people are making contact with him as the ball carrier either before he crosses the line of scrimmage or where he's getting blown up. I'm showing 2 carries in that game worth -4 yards and 1 for -3 and another for -4. So there you go. So when you look at and you're just focusing on a yards per carry average, when you get those -4s, like if you look at what Barry Sanders did, Barry Sanders is going to bust out an 80-yard run, but he's going to get -5 and -6. You're just waiting for that. Doug is not Barry Sanders. It's just not his type of game. He's not going to give you 75, 80-yarders outside of the Eagles game last year. But that's just not how he's built. He's going to get you that extra yard. He's the guy that you can rely on in pass protection. He's probably the best in pass protection that I've seen out of the backs this year. He's pretty reliable with his hands. He can chip on the outside when you need him to. He's fine, folks. You got him for this year and next year, and then they can get loose. They can cut him free because the contract doesn't bode any type of penalty for the Bucs financially if they choose to get rid of Doug Martin after 2 years. It's the same thing with Gerald McCoy. Folks want to rip on Gerald McCoy. Enjoy him while you got him, folks, because he's getting up there in age, and he's not going to be around very much longer. And I guarantee it, you'd rather have him as a 3 technique if this team is fighting for the playoffs than an unproven Devontae Lambert or someone else like that over Gerald McCoy. So,
well said.
Boom.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the notes, and I mean, just on Doug's, his first deal, good protection, got 8 yards. His second deal, he only got 3 yards. But Stocker missed his man on the tackle. The next one, he gets 6 yards. The next one was a smash play up the middle on a 2nd and 1st down, and he got actually 3 yards off of that and pulled it. So that would be one that I took out because he wasn't going for the big thing. The next one, Doug got a no gain, but Stocker and Marpet both missed their assignments. I mean, I could go down and just show you what he has, and every time Doug was responsible for his own thing. I don't want to say every time. Almost every single time, Doug broke off for 4, 5, 6 yards. Occasionally it was 3. Sometimes he just made there was one play where he made a bad decision on where to go, and he got stuffed at the line. And that was on him, and I left that in there on him. Well, guys, yeah. So all of these discussions, Bucs fans, like I said, if we're having kind of a heart-to-heart, I want to say is these things that we're saying of sit Doug, play Jacquizz, bench Jameis, put in Glennon, we're a bust if we don't make the playoffs. And I would even throw in, I would argue in that, I don't know. My analysis showed that the offensive line, yes, they had their mistakes, but it wasn't just the offensive line. It was also the tight ends, and they're not built to be offensive linemen. So, what do we do there? I don't know, but there's definitely some things that need to happen there. But I don't know that the offensive line is as horrible as we like to think they are. But they certainly have made their mistakes. We can't deny that. So, but all of that to say, Bucs fans, this has been a pretty damn good year. It's a pretty damn good year under Coach Cutter's first year as a head coach. I think. I think there's so much to this year that would spell success, and we've still got 2 more games to go. And as Nikki's pointed out, the only thing that really matters to us right now is the Saints, because it doesn't matter what the Giants do or the Lions do or anybody else does in their thing. We can't control that. There's nothing we can do to influence what they have going on. The only thing that our guys can influence what's going on is what's going to happen in New Orleans this coming weekend, this coming Saturday, not Sunday, and in a game that got flexed to 4:30 because it is a game that matters. And that's the only thing that really is in front of us right now. And Bucs fans, I would say that's what we need to focus on. Let's look at what's going on. To Chris's point, let's look at the actual data. Let's look at what's happening out there in Bucs world, and let's be better informed fans. I mean, Chris, that was the thing that you always said on BucsBrief Podcast, was be a more informed fan, right?
If you're gonna debate me, please have something to back it up. That's all I ask fans. Do the work and just don't regurgitate what other people say, because they're not using data either for the most part. So, Brent, real quick, let me ask you that question. What was your percentage with Doug? Because I did the calculation on my previous game. What was his yards per carry with what you had mentioned? Do you have it jotted down?
I had 4.9.
Okay, so I've got in the Saints game, he had 12 carries that were not contact before he reached the line of scrimmage. He averaged 4.53 and bump it up 4.54 if you want to consider it's 4.538, folks. So There you go, math nerds. So when the people in front of him are doing their job, where are we at? About a 4.5 yard over these last 2 games?
4.5 to 5 yards.
What we're showing here?
Yeah, 4.5 to 5 yards is exactly.
Well, there you go.
Showing. And you know what? You get 4.5 to 5 yards every single play. You'll never, ever, ever see first down or third down. I mean, so. Well, guys, I think that's going to wrap up this segment. This has been a fantastic conversation. Chris, I want to thank you so much for jumping in on this particular segment. Nikki, I want to thank you for jumping in really on the entire show. Why don't you guys take just a moment, and if people want to follow you on Twitter, Facebook, social media, find you anywhere out on the internet, why don't you let us know? Chris, I'll let you go first. Where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, sure. If they want to hear sports, it's at BBP Chris, like Bucs Brief Podcast Chris. If you want to follow my drinking beer show, it's at BYOCB Show on Twitter. That's where you can find me on the social medias. Look me up on the Twitters.
And your other podcast, BYOCB Show, is on iTunes, and I'm sure all the other fun podcasts.
Oh, we're everywhere, man. Yeah. We're everywhere. It's much easier. I don't have to do 35 hours of film work for a beer show.
Just 35 hours of drinking is all you have to do.
Exactly.
There you go. All right, Nikki, how about you? Where can people find you on the internet if they're interested in getting in touch with you?
Mostly just on Twitter at Bucs_Princess.
That's right.
Pretty simple.
That's right. She is the princess, and hey, listen, this girl knows what she's talking about when you get out there, and mostly she's just one of the best fans that I know. Love getting to follow her on Twitter, and that is not being creepy, because we don't do that here. All right, guys. Well, that is going to wrap up the show. That's going to wrap up this episode. And just as a final reminder, you can still get in touch with me about anything we've been talking about today. Do you agree or disagree with anything that we've had to say, particularly over this last segment? You can get in touch with us at facebook.com/thepewtercast or at Twitter at the PewterCast. Or if you're a little more winded, you can shoot me an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. I will remind everybody that this particular week there will be no instant cast show. So you're welcome to call in after the game on Saturday, but I'm going to be hanging out with my family and my kids because, Christmas Eve and all. But other than that, guys, I hope you guys have a great week. You have a Merry Christmas, and we'll catch you after the Saints game. Go Bucs.